Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2018, directed by Sylvain White, and this film is called Slender Man. So Slender Man is based on the creepypasta. You've basically got this story about this entity that kidnaps a lot of people go missing, and if you summon the Slender Man, he'll actually come and haunt you, and basically haunt you to a point where you become insane. And so if he doesn't kidnap you and take you, he basically renders you completely, unable to think straight. And so it's a very horrifying sort of presence that the Slender Man is, and the Slender Man actually pays a visit to a group of friends who are foolish enough to actually watch a video featuring the Slender Man, and now that he's in their lives, he's actually going to create a lot of havoc, and these friends are going to have to band together and try and find out how they can defeat the Slender Man once and for all. So that's the basic premise, and what happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Slender Man. Coming into this movie, I was expecting a really bad film. It didn't get rated very well on IMDb. A lot of people saying it's an absolutely terrible horror film. But the reason why I like these kinds of horror films coming into it is that maybe I'll see something a little bit different. Is that I don't judge movies based on what other people think. And it's happened before. A lot of people have criticised a lot of other movies that I've actually really liked. And so after seeing the trailer, I thought, alright, this actually looks pretty interesting. Is that, the Slender Man, the creepypasta, the story, I think it's a fascinating sort of story. You've heard real-life horror stories of these girls who killed someone in the name of Slender Man. So it's really influenced a lot of people, and so it's a very interesting sort of story. And the fact that it was made into a film, I wasn't really expecting a lot, but I just thought, alright, using an interesting idea, how is this director actually going to utilise that interesting idea? So coming into the film, I had no expectations whatsoever. I was expecting a really bad film, but I was hoping that maybe there was a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel and indicate, okay, this movie is not a complete disaster. But after watching the film, I will say this movie is a complete disaster. This movie was absolute garbage, and it's a movie that I'm not recommending, and I'm very disappointed that I actually spent money to buy a ticket to watch this movie in the cinemas with my wife last night. My wife hated it just as much as I did. It's because this movie doesn't understand what it is to be a horror film. This is a movie that is very lazy. It doesn't have any attention to detail as far as build-up is concerned. I thought the cinematography was okay. I thought it created a very dark atmosphere, but none of that atmosphere is utilised to any extent whatsoever. This is a movie that is just completely wasted opportunity. I thought underneath all the crap, there was actually an idea that could have been executed by a better director, but unfortunately this director doesn't know what the use of subtlety is. So basically, as I said, the cinematography is the only thing that's half good about the movie. Now I'm going to go into the negatives, and the biggest negative is that there is no build-up and there is no sense of subtlety, and because there's no subtlety, it's dictating every single thing that's happening. So when something scary is going to happen, it cues the scary music, and so this is a movie that reeks of lack of confidence, no self-confidence, therefore it has to dictate everything that's scary. It has to remind the viewer when to be scared instead of being scared in a subtle sense. And so when you're overdoing it to the extent that Sylvain White does this, it becomes a very, very tedious experience. This is a movie that lacked scares, as because it was so obvious. It was because it was force-feeding everything that you're actually seeing on screen. And because, subtlety is the scariest thing. If you don't try as hard, it can actually creep up on you. But this movie doesn't creep up on you because everything is basically holding your hand. Everything is, telling you what's going to happen, is because the music is a giveaway. And there are scary set pieces in this movie that happen so frequently that you become desensitized to the whole situation. I thought the Slender Man looked really bad. I thought they used him way too much, in fact, than what you can actually see. And I thought it would have been a lot better if attention was paid to the details and paid to the actual build-up, and maybe not seeing the Slender Man as much and using your imagination. The imagination creating the monster can be so much scarier than actually seeing it, and unfortunately in this case the director just splashes the Slender Man on the screen pretty much from the start up until the end, and there's no sense of imagination, and because there's no sense of imagination, it just, as I said, it's spelling everything out for you. It's an incredibly lazy horror film. I thought the soundtrack really just gives away all the unpredictability that the movie wants, and because it's so predictable, basically you eliminate all sense of suspense, you eliminate all sense of horror, and because this is a horror film banking on wanting to be scary, it just fails on all levels. I thought the acting really wasn't there. The decisions from the characters was really out of place. Now yes, it's not a realistic film, basically monsters don't exist, but at least try and make the characters' motivations and the characters' decisions somewhat believable, so you can feel as though they're in a situation that they didn't ask for. But in this movie, they do these silly things that I thought to myself, okay, this is just for the movie's progression. This is a movie that I didn't care whatsoever about anything. I thought the script was lacking, and it was definitely one of the worst horror films I've seen this year. And this is unfortunately one of the situations where I agree with the majority opinion of Slender Man. This is a movie that once again, it had an interesting idea, but maybe that idea is best left to a short sort of film instead of a feature movie, because it just doesn't work. Sylvain White, I don't know too much about this director, but I wouldn't be surprised if he hasn't really directed many horror films, because it just feels like he has no confidence in it whatsoever. Production is pretty good, it looks pretty good as far as visuals are concerned, but because there's nothing to back those visuals up, it just becomes a huge mess and a complete waste of time. So overall, for Slender Man, don't even bother, it is absolute rubbish. I'm going to give it half a star. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next, thank you for watching movies, and I'll see you later.